Our guest is a consultant who has worked with some of Canada's biggest cannabis producers. He's also a troubleshooter, and he has been trying to guide Manitoba's Bonify back into the government's good books after that company was caught with illegal cannabis. On top of those duties, he's also CEO of RavenQuest BioMed, which just signed a deal to sell seeds from a European company in Canada. Now, he wears a lot of hats in this business, so he has a unique perspective on Canada's cannabis sector, and he says there are plenty of problems still among the growers to be worked out. We're joined by George Robinson, CEO of RavenQuest BioMed. Great to see you again.
Great to be back.
So can we start off with that dip in sales, in legal sales that we heard about in January? What was that all about?
You know, I think what we're starting to see today is that people who have been consuming cannabis in the black market have tried what we've seen in the legal market, and potentially what we're starting to see is maybe that cannabis that they were buying through the retail outlets and online stores just wasn't meeting their requirements. So I think right now what they're doing is they're going back and taking a look at what are some of these other options. The number didn't change. It was about $6 billion Stats Canada said in sales, which is right about the number you and I talked about the last time I was here. So I think the market's still there. People are just making a different choice right now.
So we're hearing that some of the flower produced by some growers, legal, it's so bad the provinces are sending it back.
Yeah, that could be happening. I know what's really actually out there is there's some province retailers are actually discounting some of the product because they can't move it. We've seen some stuff is posted on social media as much as a 50% discount just to try and move some products. So I think legal stuff, right? So I think we're starting to see some, not all, but many of the stuff is showing up dry and maybe over, and just not in a quality that you'd want to burn in a joint or in some other type of mechanism. So I think what we're starting to see right now is people saying, okay, until we get it sorted out, I might go back to my black market source.
So what are the problems the growers are having?
I think overall, I think the issues are, just like we talked the last time, I think is trying to get yield up. And then once you get yield up, then what you have to do is then you have to try and dry it. And if you can't get it dried properly, you over dry it, or you have a smaller bud content that you're looking for and try to dry it within your drying room, you over dry it. And now it's nothing but crumbly flour, which doesn't solve anyone's problem who's looking to buy a decent product.
Because aesthetically, people like to have a big round bud, don't they?
I think aesthetically too, but also when you're trying to burn it, you want it to burn very slow. So you need some moisture content in it, so it actually will burn a little bit slower and just won't sort of pop and just sort of burn out really, really quickly. So I think that's what they're looking for, is a really high quality bud with appropriate amount of moisture in it, so it burns normally, what their expectations have been for years.
You say that greenhouses for growing cannabis have inherent problems.
You know, we've seen a lot of that happening right now, from yields not coming up. We've seen other issues that are going on in that particular space. I would say that the problems aren't solved. Will they get it figured out? We'll see in time, but right now it just appears to us that we're just not seeing good quality bud coming from there.
And what is the problem with greenhouses?
Well, I think you got a couple of issues that you really have to sort of take a look at. You get the stratification of temperature from the top of the glass to the top of the canopy, and then a different temperature from the canopy back down to the root structure. And really trying to distribute that air and get it down so the plant sees that same temperature throughout.
It likes to do that.
Yeah, that's where it wants to be. Imagine these plants love to be out in the high mountain alpines where they were, with a lot of airflow coming around at a pretty consistent temperature.
Okay.
Sometimes in the greenhouse, we're just not seeing that.
Right. And then, of course, mold and mildew, presumably in an enclosed environment, can be a risk.
That's where it starts to come in. If you don't have enough airflow, not enough proper airflow, then you start to see mildew coming in, which is probably the biggest issue that we're seeing right now. That mold then or mildew will start covering up the leaf structure and the solar panel, which a leaf is, to absorb light and allow other things to happen, gets filled up with powdery mildew, and the plant just can't yield itself out or grow appropriately.
The other method, of course, and I think we saw it there briefly, is growing under LEDs. Does that get around some of these problems?
LEDs are just starting to come into the foray right now. I think there's some big advantages that are going to be seen there, but I don't think it's all figured out quite yet. We're seeing some high-density LEDs that are actually hurting and harming some, but what we're starting to see is a lot more people entering into the game that had a better understanding of how the LED works and the spectrum that works right now. So I think LEDs are coming into place, which is going to be great for heat, but I think we're also going to see a little bit more oil developed in the plant versus yield out of the plant, which is good from the extraction perspective or turning it into a derived product.
With the LEDs, it might be easier.
Yes.
Will they fix the problems with the greenhouses, though?
I think you will. I mean, you have greenhouses that are growing flowers and other things in northern climates, such as in Holland and Denmark and those areas. So I think they've got to figure it out, but it's going to be time. And do we have that time relative to some of the market caps some of the groups have and some of the commitments they got to make on revenue? So I think time is going to tell.
Of course, we've got this pretty sophisticated black market that's been there for decades, and they're not going away.
You know, black market's been really great. For 40 or 50 years, they've been there banging out at 6 to 10,000 square feet and solving the market. I think what we've done is we've tried to chase the million square foot greenhouses or very large indoor spaces, and I think we're starting to learn a little bit more about how they were very, very good at what they were doing. I think we're going to have to just step back and kind of review why they were successful, and not just sort of shun them away, but say, what did you know that I need to know about how to grow cannabis?
I'm thinking about an Aurora Cannabis. I know you're probably reluctant to talk about an individual company, but they've opened giant greenhouses. Is that going to be inherently difficult until they've learned exactly how the system works?
There's many people with big greenhouses, so I'll talk from that perspective rather than a particular company. I think most of them are having lots of challenges. When you have, remember we talked about the fertigation systems the last time we were together?
Fertilization and irrigation.
Correct.
Yeah,
so what happens is if you have a problem that creeps into these large systems that are very, very large, that problem fertigation system spreads throughout the whole greenhouse, and that is very hard to try and contain. So what you need to do is actually have multiple fertigation systems in these large greenhouses, and I think that will be the next path we're going to start to take a look at.
Should we even really be growing cannabis in Canada? I mean, it's not really the ideal climate for it.
I mean, it depends where you say. We've been growing it in warehouses at 6 to 10,000 square feet and been doing a great job. Now,
relatively small.
Yeah. But to your question, is cannabis really meant to be growing in a million square foot greenhouse? I'm not sure yet. We haven't just really got around to saying, is there ways that we can make this a lot better? You know what, if we can put a man on the moon, I'm pretty sure we're going to figure out how to grow cannabis in a greenhouse. It's just going to take time.
But just in the sense we don't grow bananas in Canada or pineapples, wouldn't it be better growing this stuff in Colombia and importing it?
It might be, although I think cannabis is sort of one of the plant structures in our agricultural sector that even I think Health Canada and the government really wants to hold on and say, hey, listen, we've been pretty good at this. BC bud and Canadian bud's been renowned worldwide. Why would we just let it go? I just think we have to kind of step back and look at how we're going to make the bud actually really, really good so people really want to consume it right across Canada and wherever we export it out to some of the other nations for medical marijuana. So
you were brought in as interim CEO of Bonify after this mysterious 200-kilogram package of unauthorized or uncertified weed showed up. Now, the Mounties apparently are not going to be investigating. Did that surprise you?
You know, a little bit of a surprise because we never got a phone call. You know, we have a lot of information. I believe, I can't speak for Health Canada, but Health Canada indicated to us that they had sort of sent out the redacted report that we had sent to them. But we never had the RCMP reach out to us and ask us for the unredacted information and all the other evidence that we had. So a little bit surprised, but you know what? There is still some things there. You know, Bill C-45 is really about the Cannabis Act. C-46 was changes around the use of cannabis and other things. Maybe there's still some things in there they haven't figured out yet. So maybe they just didn't know how to get their head wrapped around, starting an investigation like this.
It seems weird they wouldn't be cracking down when they've been the rhetoric about driving the black market out of existence has been so strong.
Yeah, I think, what we're seeing on social media today, relative to the report I did yesterday was really this, is they shut down a dispensary, no problem, but why wouldn't they take an action like this? And again, I'm talking from the industry perspective, not about Bonify or RavenQuest, but I think as I try and give the pragmatic voice that's there, is that I think we really have to take a look at where's the fingerprint, where is the stamp, where's the precedence that we need to say we can't let this behavior happen in the industry.
When would you hope Bonify would get its sales license back?
Health Canada has its own time frame. It's hard to say that, but I think the answer is going to look something like this. We have one data point. In early February, they came in and inspected our facility, and they found us compliant. So that's awesome. But I think what we're going to have to do is actually show them a couple of compliancies. So they're going to do maybe another inspection, and then maybe at that point we get the license back. But we're well there. They reviewed the facility over 2 days. We are 100% compliant. So we're really excited that the next inspection may give us back the sales license again. And
then you also run RavenQuest BioMed. You're a busy guy, and you formed a partnership to bring in seeds from Europe. How does that work?
I think what's happening right now is genetics is really becoming the thing that we really have to start being concerned about. If you're going to have an issue in a greenhouse, you're going to have an issue in an indoor grow, you're going to have to replace those genetics. So we really wanted to get in on the genetics pool, and Dutch Passion was really trying to figure out how can we sort of manage the seeds coming in to make sure they're appropriately sold, appropriately managed, and not mismanaged. So they reached out to us, and working with them, we were able to say, okay, we get to manage all of Canada on the seed quantities, but more importantly, we're thinking about as we come in now to springtime and people want to start planting at home their 4 plants.
Yeah.
What a great opportunity to give them 4 seeds to say, hey, listen, no different than a bread maker and people wanted to make bread. Why not give your hand a try at growing some cannabis in your backyard?
And so if people are thinking of doing that, when should they be starting the seeds indoors right now?
Yeah, they should be. You know, it's like anything, like you do tomatoes or anything else. You know, we always say the full moon in February is when you sort of crack a seed and go from there, but you can still move it along a little bit quicker. I still think we got lots of time yet to go.
Okay, yep. I'm sure a lot of households across Canada, four plants will be going in, yeah.
You bet, absolutely.
Maybe ones with teenagers, they'll be debating the issue, yeah. George, always great talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
George Robinson, CEO of RavenQuest BioMed and interim CEO at Bonify.